Well, good morning and welcome to SouthPoint Church, where we are one church in, well, we're not actually one church in multiple locations this Sunday. Actually, we're one church and one location this Sunday. Is anyone fired up to be at the Lusby campus? I want to say thanks for coming out this morning. We are so glad that you chose to be with us. Hey, before I kind of dive in and start my normal message thing, I've got to address something. I don't know if you looked at the stage and saw the diversity on the stage. I don't know if you look around the room and see the diversity in our church. In a world that is broken and the events that have happened, to ignore the problem of race in our country would be unwise as followers of Jesus. It makes me proud to be a part of a church where we really believe what Jesus says, that we should love our neighbor as ourselves, and that all people matter deeply to the heart of God. And not only does God call us to love our neighbor, He calls us to make sure that if you are a follower of Jesus, that we bring justice and goodness wherever we go. So I really want to encourage you, if you call SouthPoint your home this week, maybe just a little bit of extra grace, maybe a little bit of extra kindness, maybe we could be better listeners, maybe we could be bridge builders instead of wall builders. Because see, I have this hope. See, I believe Jesus came to change the world, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. Where Sunday is not the most segregated hour, but at some point the world would come on Sunday and go, how do you guys get along? And we would go, it's not our politics, it's not our culture, it is a relationship with a person and his name is Jesus. You should get to know him. Okay, I'm done preaching, that's good. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. I think the church is the hope of the world, and we need to represent that. So thanks for listening to that. Thank you for being a part of that. I'm so glad that you're here. Hey, listen, we're in week 3 of a series called Life is a Tough Mudder. Now, the good thing is, even if you missed the last couple weeks, you can go onto our website and watch the video. You can go to our YouTube and watch the video. This is kind of a standalone deal. But listen, we've repeated and reminded ourselves of a common truth. The reason we showed the picture of the Tough Mudder race is because there's something that's true about a Tough Mudder race that is true about each and every human being, regardless of where you are on the faith spectrum. Whether you're an atheist, whether you're a follower of Jesus, whether you're of some other faith, listen, every single one of us, regardless of where we're at, will experience 2 things in life. And these are the 2 things. We all want a good life. Every single person is here this morning. Every person watching this, every person listening, every person that doesn't even show up, they want a good life. And the second truth is that each and every one of us will experience obstacles in life. We all want a good life, and we're all going to experience obstacles in life, and that's why we're doing this series, Life is a Tough Mudder, because there will be obstacles. Now, I need to be honest this morning. There's a truth this morning. I couldn't fit all I wanted to say into this one message. So if you, at the end of this, you're going to be like, he's not done, and I'm going to go, you're right, I'm not done. You need to come back next week. And so please, if you can't make it next week, watch the video, because this message is really a 2-part message, and I'm going to do part 1 and then part 2. And so with that kind of in mind, I need to kind of dive in early to a truth that you and I experienced. You felt it, I felt it, we've all done it. We're going to put it up on the screen. It's going to be kind of in your insert. It says, listen, having an unknown obstacle is not only hard to fix, but it can leave us feeling hopeless. Listen, having an unknown obstacle is not only hard to fix, it can leave us feeling hopeless. I've actually experienced this. I had a story I wanted to tell you that illustrates this truth very, very, very perfectly. It happened years ago. My wife and I are homeowners, and it's an older home. It's a little home, but it's our home, and we love it. And you'll get why it's a little bit older later in the story. And so one morning, I was kind of sitting in my living room, and I have hardwood floors, and I have a fireplace, and I was sitting in my chair, and I was doing some reading. I really like to read. We have this little carpet, and I was sitting there reading, and the sun was coming through this big bay window that we have, and it was one of those moments where you have like a good cup of coffee, and it's a great moment. Until there was a smell that assaulted my nose. Now, I don't know about you all, But there's a lot of things that I can put up with and a lot of things I can't put up with. If you've ever met me and you watch me eat, I'm OCD. I like everything neat and in order and in its place. I like all the spaces cleaned. But I got married, I have kids, and I have a full-time job, and my wife works, and I realized that I could either have my family love me or have a clean house. And so I have my family love me, and I don't really mind messes, but smells, I don't like them. They bother me. They offend me. So there I was reading with my cup of coffee, and the sun's shining through, and it was just a beautiful moment, but there was this funk. And I was like, what is that? Have you ever done that? What is that? Like I was a bloodhound, and I literally, this is what I do. I start walking around the house. Now we have cats, so I think maybe the cat peed on the carpet. And so I don't know if you've ever done this. You're like, do I put my hand down there or do I put my foot? So you go get a paper towel and you gotta like pat, and no, the cat hadn't peed. And so I was looking for maybe like a dead mouse or maybe the cat, like I was looking on all the corners, and the smell was a little bit stronger in one area of the room, but not so much. And I couldn't find anything. So I did what all good people do. I went into my drawer and I got a thing of Febreze. Why are you laughing? That's what you do. Right? I couldn't figure it out, so I get some Febreze and I spray it, and I'm like, it smells good. And I read my book, and I didn't smell the smell for about a day or two, but the next couple days I was back in the living room, and all of a sudden I smelt the smell, and this time it was worse. And I was like, oh, this is bad. And I'm looking around, I'm pulling out the couches, I'm pulling up the chairs, and we have this fireplace. I even go into the fireplace, and we don't use it very often, but there were a little bit of ashes, so I like scraped through the ashes, and I'm like, I don't see anything. I can't figure this out. Like, where's this coming from? And so I said, I don't know. And so I sprayed Febreze in the fireplace. I sprayed it on the carpet. I sprayed it on the couches. I sprayed it everywhere. Lots of it, all of it. And my wife's like, what is wrong with you? And I go, I don't know, but I hate that bad smell. And so it covered up for a little while, but the smell came back faster this time. I mean, the Febreze only worked for like a day. And it was increasingly getting worse. And this was like, I don't want to be like, this is church, but it was like, death in the bathroom all combined. Like, it was bad. It was just something you never want to smell. And like, I don't want this smell in my house. And I said, you know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna vacuum. I sprayed that sprinkle stuff on the carpet. I vacuumed it. I even cleaned out the fireplace. And as I was cleaning out the fireplace, I realized that there was a flue vent from the bottom. Because we have an older house, we have a boiler in the basement that provides heat. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe it's coming from down there. And I didn't know how to do it, but I pulled this top off and I saw this vent and it had a bunch of ashes. I said, maybe there's something in there that's dead and dying and it stinks because it's really strong in here. So I went down and I unplugged my thing and did all this stuff and pulled out all these ashes and looked at it. There was nothing dead. It didn't smell really bad. And I was like, well, that's not it. So I put it all back together. I came back in the next couple of days and it was still bad. And it was really close to the fireplace. I'm like, what is up with this? So I get a giant ladder and I put this ladder up and I climb up on the top of my roof and my wife's like, please don't die. We need you. You just have to know how clumsy I am. Anyway, so I get up on top of there, and I'm looking down, and we have this metal grate, but it's got a hole in it. It's kind of old and crusty again, an older house. And I'm looking down in the middle of the day down. We have 2 flues, and I'm looking down the flue to see if like anything like had fallen in there and died. Like I looked down there, and I couldn't see anything. I was like, this is miserable. And so I went down and did, the only thing I know how to do is I sprayed Febreze. I had to go get a new bottle, though. So I couldn't take it any longer. So I went downstairs again, looked at that, and then finally I said, you know what? I'm going to do one last thing before I just sell my house. I said, I'm going to get a flashlight. I'm going to climb up, I'm going to look down the flue with a flashlight. And this time when I looked down the flue with a flashlight, I saw something. It was furry, and it had a tail, and it wasn't moving. What I think it was a squirrel. And apparently the squirrel had gotten into our flue, and we don't use our fireplace in the summertime, and so I don't know how I didn't ever hear it, but it just must have died. And there it was. I found it. This is the cause of the stink. And so I did what all good people do. I said, I'm not getting a dead squirrel out of my thing. I mean, I couldn't reach it from there, and I like did the flue thingy, and all I could hear was the thumpity thump of the dead squirrel up there. I'm like, I don't know how to get this thing out. So I looked at the phone book, and I like called a couple different chimney sweep people and said, hey, I have this dead squirrel in my thing. Can you come get it? And they said, no, click. Hey, I have this dead squirrel, click. Someone said, how about you try animal control? So I called animal control, and they said, is it dead? I'm like, yep, well, then it's controlled. We can't help you. Y'all need Jesus. So anyway, I'm like, what do I do? So this is my plan. I said, I'm gonna get on the nastiest clothes that I never ever am gonna wear again. I pull out all the stuff in the fireplace. Now, I don't have any like work gloves that I'm gonna touch a dead squirrel with, so I do what all people who need ingenuity do. I use my old Walmart bags. Anybody got old Walmart bags? And this time I like tripled them, because if they had a hole or something, I didn't want to touch that dead squirrel. So I had all these bags on my hand, and I am jammed up in the fireplace, and I am trying to reach, and I can't reach it. And I mean, I'm kind of a slight, thin guy, so I'm up there, I'm just jamming, and I'm like, babe, and it smells so bad. I think I burped a little bit, where you vomit burp, and I swallowed it a little bit. And then I reached up in there, and I could feel it, but and the bad thing is it was stiff. It was like a rock. And then so, finally I was able to get a little bit of its claw in its paw, and I could get it. Finally, I grabbed this cardboard thing. It was just stuck in four links like this, dead. And I pulled it out, and it was reeking, and there it was in the bags, and I wrapped it up, and I took it out to the trash, and I was like, oh, I conquered. Oh, but I wasn't finished. Because I knew that every time I lit a fire, instead of chestnuts over a roasting fire, it would be squirrel over a roasting fire. So I got some cleaning stuff, and I cleaned the top of it to the best I could, and I got rid of the smell. And then I looked at my wife, and I said, we've conquered. And she said, about time. I think we invested stock in Febreze for our season. Anyway, you might be asking, what does that have to do with having an unknown obstacle? It's not hard to fix. It can leave us feeling hopeless. See, when I didn't know what was causing that bad odor, I felt like hopeless, because I was going to be stuck with that stink. And it got me thinking, I bet each and every one of us has experienced something similar to my squirrel story. Maybe there was an area of your life that didn't work, or maybe it's still not working, or maybe you have an area of your life that matters, but it isn't working, but you don't know why. And if you are really honest, you're smiling here in church today, but if you are really honest, you're scared you're going to be stuck with the stink of an unknown obstacle in a key area of your life that you don't know how to fix. Maybe you're here today and it's financial. I mean, you got a good job. You don't gamble your money away. You're not spending your money on addiction. You don't feel like you're extravagantly spending, but you get to the end of every month and there's not enough to cover the bills. And you hate the financial pressure that brings, but you don't know why you're there. You feel hopeless. And you think you're going to be stuck with the stink in that area of your life. Maybe it's not financial. Maybe it's physical for you. You can't sleep. Your body aches. You're lethargic all day. And you know that you need to eat better. You know you need some kind of exercise. But somehow, magically, you end up on the couch with a bowl of ice cream and you binge Netflix. We've all been there. At least I have. But you don't know why you keep ending up there. And you feel hopeless. And you're afraid you're going to be stuck with the stink of not being able to get better. Maybe for you it's relational. Maybe you're really good at making friends, but not so good at keeping them. You know you have this quirk that you get defensive really quickly and you don't mean to, and you try really hard not to. But for some reason it always comes up and you seem to push people away. And you can't seem to stop yourself. And you don't know why. And you feel hopeless. And you're afraid you're going to be stuck with this thing the rest of your life. Maybe it's spiritual. You believe in God. You try to be a good person. But you're really puzzled about this whole how to connect with God. And it seems like everyone around you does it so much better than you. And it seems like this mystery that you'll never be able to solve. And you don't know why. You feel hopeless. You think you're going to be stuck with the stink for the rest of your life. Maybe for you, it's vocationally. I mean, you are really good at your job. Matter of fact, you're really good. You like what you do. You're a hard worker. There's one small problem. You and your boss don't get along. You want to get promoted, and if you are really honest, as you look back over your life, you've never gotten along with any of your supervisors. You desperately desire to move ahead, but you don't know why you can't get along with any of your bosses or supervisors. You feel hopeless, and you're afraid you're going to be stuck with this thing. Maybe for you, it's emotional. You want to be an even-keeled person who doesn't overreact and explode at the things that are just, you can just let them go. And so you know what you do is you try really hard. But if you were honest, the harder you try, it seems like the more outbursts of anger that you have that push people away. You don't know why. You feel hopeless. And you're afraid that you're going to be stuck with the stink. And you didn't have to come to church. You don't have to read the Bible. All of us have experienced this truth. That sometimes when we have an unknown obstacle in our life, it keeps us from the very things that you and I want. But here's the problem, and it's pretty simple and it's pretty plain. When we have an unknown obstacle, when we have a problem and we don't know how to fix it, it can feel impossible. And when you don't know how to fix it, you're stuck with it. But it gets worse. This whole trial and error process, well, if I don't know what it is, I'll just try this, and if that doesn't work, I'll try this, and if that doesn't work, that is painful and pricey. So you and I are left asking a pretty important question today. How do you and I not get stuck with the stink of having an unknown obstacle in a key area of our life so that you and I can experience the life that you want and that God wants for you? Now, this is the part of the message that I think every Sunday I just can't wait to get to, because I do have some good news in the midst of your struggle and my struggle and our struggle, is you are not alone. Your neighbor is in this with you. Smile and turn at your neighbor and go, yep. This is something every human being on every continent, every culture, all of us will struggle with this. You are not alone. Not only are you not alone, God knew that this would be an issue. Matter of fact, Jesus himself addresses this very issue. But he tells a parables because he wants us to get it. He wants us to put it in practical terms. So let's take a look at what Jesus says. We see it in the eyewitness account of the Gospel of Mark 4, 1 through 10, and then 13 through 20. We're going to put it up here, and it's on the back of your insert. And it says, again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. The crowd that had gathered around him was so large that he had to get into a boat, and he sat out on the lake, while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. And he taught them many things by parables, and in his teachings he said, listen, a farmer went out to sow a seed. Now listen, I'm going to stop here. I don't know anything about farming. I didn't grow up in a farm culture. I grew up in kind of an inner city culture. I don't know anything about farming, but back in those farming days, planting seed was important because that's how you lived. You couldn't go to the local grocery store. If you wanted to eat, you had to grow stuff, and typically that's how you made your living. So this was pretty important. This probably caught everyone's attention. He says, listen, a farmer went out to sow a seed, and as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came out, the plants were scorched and they had withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plant so that they did not bear grain. Still other seed fell on good soil, and it came up and it grew and it produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, some 100 times. Then Jesus said, whoever has ears, let them hear. And when he was alone, the 12 and the others around him asked him about this parable. Now, the first thing we're going to do before I read the rest of what Jesus says is this, is Jesus reminds people that, listen, we all do life to get a result. Look up here. We all live life hoping to get a certain result. We're all like the farmers. We're all doing things hoping to experience the life that we want. The problem with this parable and the problem that you and I experience is we do things hoping to get a certain result from life, but if we were really honest, we often don't get the results we. And Jesus said, that's a problem. In our life, it's a problem. But the disciples were saying, what does this parable mean? And so Jesus goes on to tell them, and this is going to change to Mark 4:13. Okay. It's a good thing I have my trusty Bible. Okay, good. It's back. There we go. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable? And this is the whole point of the series is Jesus saying, if you don't understand this concept, this truth, how will you understand any aspect of life? If you don't get this, how will you understand anything about life? This is key to experiencing life. And he says the farmer sows the word, which he's basically saying, listen, it is not the good things you want, it's how you try to get the good things that you want. See, the seed is never the problem, it's always the soil. Can I get an amen? Let me say it again. It's not the seed. It's not desiring the good things that you want. It's how we go about trying to get them. It's the soil that's the problem. Some people are like the seed sown along the path where the word is sown, and as soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. He's saying, man, there's this hard ground so the seed can never get in. And then you have an enemy of your soul who comes and snatches it away. Others are like seeds sown in rocky places. They hear the word at once and they receive it with joy. Woo, that sounds good. I like budgeting until you have to do it. Anyway, that's a different sermon. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution, when it gets hard, when it isn't easy, it comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. Like we know there's some good things to do, but doing good things isn't always easy. And so when it's not easy, we go, I give up. He goes on to say, still others are seed like those sown among the thorns. They hear the word, but the worries of this light, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things come in and choke out the word, making it unfruitful. He says, listen, man, distractions, desires, they'll rob you from the very things that you want. He goes on to say, others are like seeds sown on the good soil. They hear the word, they accept it, and produce a crop, some 30, some 60, some 100 times what was sown. So we all get the point. It's not the seed, it's the soil. Here, Jesus reminds us there's 4 kinds of soil. One is the soil that we all want to be. We all want to be. Doesn't everyone want to be the good soil? I want life to work. I don't want a dead squirrel in my flu stinking up my life. You don't want some unknown problem in your life stinking up your life. You want the things that you do to lead to the results that lead to life. But Jesus tells us that there's going to be 3 common obstacles that all of us face. And this is regardless of whether you have some faith, no faith, or different faith. All of us are going to experience this. This is what I love about Jesus. Jesus wants to make sure that no one would have an unknown obstacle to life. So he comes and he tells us, listen, I'm going to tell you exactly what this is. So this morning, I want to make 3 brief observations about what Jesus is saying so that we can have clarity. Here's obstacle number 1 that all of us have in common. We're going to put up on the screen. We can become hardened by life's pain and trauma. Let me say it again. We can become hardened by life's pain and trauma. You know how a path gets made? A path gets made because it gets walked on or it's trampled on. It used to be soft soil. It used to be good soil, but either animals or carts or people have stomped on it, and it's had enough stomping and enough weight and enough damage that the soil becomes packed and it's hardened, and it cannot take any seed. And so it's easily swept away by the birds or the enemy or anything else. Jesus is saying, listen, we become hardened by pain and trauma. Here's what I've discovered. When you and I experience enough pain and trauma, it warps and bends the way that we think, the way that we see, and the way that we feel. True example. This happened to me. I was 9 years old. Got out of school. My dad told me that my mom was dead. She had taken her own life. Talk about hurt and trauma. Then to make it worse, they sent me to a Christian counselor who was a child molester. Oh, and then on top of that, when my dad couldn't handle me, he took me to the police station and said, here he is. And he looked at me and said, I hope you got what you wanted. You want to know the kind of influences I had as a young person from adults who were supposed to love me? All of them were gone. Not trustworthy. They all spoke things into my life through their actions that bent and warped me. Do you know what it's like to go through life wanting to be loved and wanting to be in relationships but trusting no one? Those wounds created a hard heart, and if you had met me before I knew Jesus, you wouldn't want to know me. I didn't get hardened because I chose it. Something happened. And it bent the way that I thought. It bent the way that I felt. As I've moved along in my life, I can think about relationships that I tried to have that I ruined, or how I pushed people away, or how I couldn't trust people. All because, not because I didn't want to, but because something happened. And when I knew that there was a right way to do something, or God gave me instruction, it was really hard because I had this hard place in my life when it came to trusting people. Not because I wanted to, not because I chose to. And I didn't even know what was going on. I just knew I was never going to ever hurt like that again. You're not going to hurt me. And if I need to, I will hurt you first before you get to me. I had a hard path. I didn't understand it and I didn't know it, but it was keeping me from the very life I want. I want to pull up this slide. It's got a little wheel. We talked about this last week, about the different areas of our life, relationally, emotionally, and intellectually, and physically, and financially, and spiritually. I want to ask a question here. Is there an area of your life where you've experienced trauma, maybe spiritually? You went to a church and they preached something that was false, or they guilted or they shamed you, and you have a hardened path against church. Maybe it's financially. Maybe you grew up and you were poor. Maybe you saw someone do something wrong, or maybe something bad happened and you've experienced pain there. Maybe it was emotionally. Maybe someone treated you inappropriately. I don't know what it is. But at some point, the unknown obstacle, the cause of the stink in your life, may be a past pain or trauma that has hardened you against the good truth that God wants to speak into your life so that you'll experience life and life to the full. Jesus says, listen, he doesn't want any of us to be the hardened path. We'll never get the results that we want. This leads me into observation number 2. We're going to put up on the screen and you can follow along in your insert. It says, life has some inconvenience and discomforts that can cause us to be shallow. Smile. Come on, no one likes that statement, do they? Come on, life has some, come on, can we just be honest? Life has some, we are all together because something didn't work. So some of you were inconvenienced and had to drive. Life has some inconvenience and discomforts that can cause us to be shallow. See, if we are really honest in life, and this is the part that's a little bit hard to say, but true tellers tell the truth because they love you. The reality is most of the good results that you and I want in life require 2 things. They require discipline and delayed gratification. Aren't you glad you showed up to church today? I mean, can we just be really honest? Most of the good things that you and I want require discipline. We have to create a habit. We have to follow that habit. We have to say no to some other things. So we say yes to something better. It requires delayed gratification. We go, I'm not going to do that so I can have that, even though that thing's fun right now, but it's going to keep me from anyone here gets that concept that if you want good things financially, if you want good things intellectually, if you want good things relationally, you have to practice discipline and delayed gratification. That's just a reality, and if you don't like that, then you will not do well in life. Here's the problem. Myself, and maybe some of you, it's painful. I don't like inconvenience and discomfort. And so you know what we do? We want to avoid the pain of discipline and delayed gratification, except there's a small problem. We can avoid the pain of discipline and delayed gratification, except there is a pain that we'll experience. It's called the pain of disappointment. You see, here's what I've discovered. You and I are going to experience pain in life. Sorry. But we can either experience the pain of discipline and delayed gratification, or we can experience the pain of disappointment. The choice is ours. Man, I failed at this in our marriage early on. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how you do your family finances. Everyone does it differently. I'm not judging you. You do it however you want. But when my wife and I first got married, I was pretty good. I worked for a financial company. I was really good at finances. I was able to do all that stuff. And for the first couple years that my wife and I were married, I did it. And I did it because we had lots of extra money because it was just us, right? But then I went into full-time ministry, and then we had a couple of kids, and then we just financially, it was just very difficult to be in ministry and have a couple of kids. And so my wife, who's very organized and actually probably better at it than me, she says, hey, you're working a lot, you're stressed a lot. Why don't you let me do that and I'll take care of that for you? And I said, great. And at first, we were kind of partners in this and we would engage, we'd have talks. But there was a season where I just bailed. I just totally disengaged. We didn't have any conversations. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I didn't even want to look at the bank records. And I didn't do that because she was doing a great job. I did it so I didn't have to be accountable for how I spent money because I wanted to spend money the way I wanted to spend money. And it got us into debt, and we're still paying for it to this day because I didn't want the pain and inconvenience and the uncomfortableness of facing where we're at. I didn't want to practice discipline. I wanted to spend what I had because I worked for it now. I didn't want to practice delayed gratification. I wanted what I wanted, when I wanted it, how I wanted it, and I wanted it now. So I want to throw up the same circle screen. And I want to ask you a question. Is there an unknown obstacle in your life that is caused because you're being shallow? Because you want to avoid the pain of discipline and delayed gratification. Relationally, delayed gratification. There's a reason why God calls us to be sexually pure. because he wants you to have great sex. And I know we're in church and y'all are like, whoa. Like, just so you know, God's the one who invented sex, and he's the one that said, be fruitful and multiply. But he says you're supposed to do it in the covenant of marriage. And so if you practice delayed gratification and you wait and your spouse waits, then the only experience you have is together, and it is much better. What about financially? It's always good emotionally, isn't it, to vent and say whatever it is you want when you're angry, isn't it? Rather than to practice self-discipline and go, you know what, I don't need to respond. Or maybe I can have delayed gratification. Maybe saying that sharp thing or bursting out in anger would feel good in the moment, but it's going to hurt the relationship. So I'm going to practice delayed gratification and not feel good in the moment of yelling, but I want to feel good about a relationship that I haven't ruined. So I have a question. In one of these areas that maybe you're not winning, and you think maybe it's this unknown obstacle, could your unknown obstacle be the fact that you are not willing to practice discipline and delayed gratification? If you were very honest, you are being shallow, but it's not leading to the results that you want. Which leads me to observation number 3 that's on the insert, and it's going to be up here on the screen, is the distraction and desires of life can cause us to be unproductive. The distractions and desires of life can cause us to be unproductive. You see, here's what I've discovered. Once you get over like 3 or 4 years old, there's just some things in life you got to do. You got to dress yourself. You got to feed yourself. You know, the only people that don't feed themselves are babies and people who are invalids or have challenges that need someone to help them. But typically healthy people feed themselves. That's why I say as a pastor, my job is not to feed you. My job is to lead you to the water, and then you feed yourselves, right? Right? And so there's some duties that we're all going to have in life. There's just some duties that we're all going to have, and desires. And you know what? Here's the amazing thing about duties and desires. God gives us an opportunity to do both of them. There's nothing inherently wrong with duties and us being kind of contributing to life. And there's nothing wrong with desire. God gave us chocolate. It's good. Gave us bacon. And I love all my vegan friends. It's more for me. Sorry. So listen, it is not inherently wrong that we have duties or desires, but here's what is wrong. When our duties or our desires distract us from our destiny. You see, when you and I are overrun with contributing or consuming, we create dysfunction. And we're not meant to do that. We're meant to be human beings who are connected, who consume and contribute. We kind of have this broad spectrum of all these things that we're supposed to do. Man, I messed this up badly. In a season of my life, I don't know why, but for some reason, I was trying to think about how I did this. I was newly married. I think I was in my 1st or 2nd year of marriage. Somehow, someone got me hooked on golfing. I don't know, someone invited me to go golfing. Any golfers here in the house? Yeah, okay, no one, great. This story's gonna go over really well. So anyway, I don't know how it happened. I went golfing, and I loved golfing. And because, one, I love being outside. It's competitive. You can get better at it. You can do it with other people. And you know what the great thing is you're not necessarily trying to beat the person next to you, but you always are. But you're really trying to beat yourself. You're always trying to better yourself. And so I fell in love with golf. And then the problem was there's nothing wrong with golfing as a hobby. The problem is I became obsessed with it. So I started spending money. I got clubs, and I hired someone to teach me how to do it. And I started golfing, 2 times a week, and then it was 3 times a week, and then it was 5 times a week. And then I upgraded and bought better clubs. And all of a sudden I discovered I was leaving my job early, and there's nothing wrong with leaving your work early to go golfing if you go in early and you maybe stay late. But I didn't go in early or stay late. I just left early. Don't laugh, that was bad. And all of a sudden I became obsessed with this thing, golfing. And I can remember during the summer months, I would come home and I would play that what they call twilight hours, where you could go in after 3, and it was like a small fee, and you could just golf until it was dark. And I can remember I'd get home at 8:30, and listen, my wife was working, and she would get up at dark 30, drive an hour to work all day, drive an hour, come home, and there I would be coming home. She was like, "What'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I was on the golf course." She's like, "Wow, man, you're really helpful." And so she made dinner, and I was just a bad spouse, and I was a bad employee. What is wrong? I need Jesus. But here's what I discovered. is that there was this desire that distracted me from things that I was supposed to do. So I wonder if we can put up the thing. Circle, it's going to come back up. I wonder if you have any duties or desires that are distracting you. I want to specifically speak to moms and dads in the house, especially moms and dads of young children. Your kids are going to leave. Work on your marriage so you stay married. The best parenting advice you can be for your kids is to stay married. Like, you should invest in them. You should be a good parent, but invest in your marriage. My little kids used to try to jump in and go, you love me more than mom. I go, no, you're leaving. I need her to stay married to me. I won't make it. I mean, parenting's a duty. Providing for your family is a good duty. But are you a workaholic? Do you have a desire that is destroying your relationships? Are you hooked on porn, drinking, drugs? Maybe it's just people seeing you and you just are always wanting people to look at you. What desire or duty is distracting you from a destiny? You see, here's what I discovered. I was trying to make my life better, but here's what I discovered. To be fully human isn't just about making your life better. It's about making the world a better place for others. So I want to ask you, relationally, spiritually, physically, intellectually, and emotionally, are you a student and you're getting distracted? Relationally, in your marriage, are you getting distracted? Is there a desire that's overtaken? And if we are really honest, I would ask this question. Maybe your unknown obstacle is that you've let a desire or duty distract you from your destiny. Because life isn't just about making this world a better place for you and yours. It's about making the world a better place for all of us. Which leads us to a truth this morning. We're going to put it up on the screen and we're going to fill it out. It says, having good soil in the care of our lives is possible. The great news is, and listen, I know this because I struggled with all of those, and God in His grace has stepped in. I don't have good soil in all areas of my life. I'm still working and I'm still in process. But the good news is having good soil in the cares or lives is possible, but it requires what? Intentional effort. It doesn't just happen. Now, this is where it's a two-part message. Next Sunday, I'm going to come back and talk about how to take hardened soil and make it soft soil. I'm going to talk about next week if you have shallow soil, how to make it good soil. I'm going to talk about if you have thorny or weeds in your life, how we can make it good soil. But it requires intentional effort. It doesn't just happen on its own. God will do what He can do, but God's going to ask you to do what only you can do for yourself. Now I want to close going back to my story about the squirrel. See, I didn't know what was causing it. So I went and grabbed something to kind of mask the smell. I was spraying Febreze, and when I first started, I only needed a little bit of Febreze, right? And then as the odor got worse, I needed a little bit more. And then when the odor got a little bit worse, I needed a little bit more. And soon the Febreze wouldn't cover up the stink. I want to ask you a question. What are you using as Febreze in your life? It's an area that's not working. Instead of trying to figure out what the problem is, you're trying to mask the smell of it not working. And that's what Jesus is trying to teach us. He loves us enough to tell us the truth. When you try to solve the symptom and not the problem, we stay stuck. And Jesus didn't die on a cross. He didn't conquer hell and death. He didn't come back and build a church for you and I to stay stuck. He came so that you and I could experience life and life to the full. So here's our hope and our prayer, is that none of you would settle for Febreze in your life. That you'd be willing to be intentional to figure out how can you have good soil in all the key areas of your life so that you can experience the life that Jesus died for. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for grace. I mean, we've all missed it. I mean, I told 3 stories of I just epically failed. The great news is there's mercy and grace when we fail. There's forgiveness. But there's more than forgiveness, God. There's more than grace. You don't want to just forgive us. You want us to be better. You want us to be healed. You want us to experience life to the full. You just don't want us to say sorry for the same old things over and over. No, God, you want us to come alive and be alive. God, thank you for Jesus being a truth teller who speaks to these possible unknown obstacles so that none of us have to stay stuck. We love you and thank you. May our hearts be open to you. We love you and thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you're ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey or continue to support SouthPoint, you can connect to a small group, serve on a team, and give financially by clicking the box on the right. To watch other sermons from SouthPoint Church, click the playlist on the left. Click the logo to subscribe.